Hi! Nope. Welcome! No, ew. Welcome to the end of January. At last. Hi, I'm Jessica and I absolutely love reading and I love talking about books and I love hearing about books. So I have decided to make this account for exactly that reason. This is, as you can probably tell, my first video because I'm incredibly awkward and I have no idea what I'm about to say. I've read 8 books this month, which is in quantity quite a good month. Hopefully, if I can fit it into the next few hours before February, I will have read another book and then it's 9. I don't know what else I meant to say in an intro, so I'm gonna start now. One is The Scientific Secrets of Doctor Who by Simon Guerrier and Dr. Marek Kukula. Yeah. I am a massive Doctor Who fan, so I went to a talk about this book 2 years ago and they signed my book, which was quite cool. But I read a quarter of it and then kind of forgot where I put it, and I found it again in December, and so this was kind of the first book I read because I read it over December through to, I think I finished on January 3rd. I did rate this 3 stars, but I think that's more because I'm not very good at science. Science isn't one of the topics I would naturally pick up. I did like learning about it. It's about how close the show is to real science and if things in the show years ago may have now been scientific discoveries, and it was good that it wasn't just science because I think that would really intimidate me. It was split between a bit of science and then a short story based on Doctor Who, bit of science, short story. But yeah, I rated it 3 stars, not because I didn't enjoy it, just maybe because it wasn't quite my thing. I then had quite a big gap, I think 2 weeks, where I just didn't read because it was the beginning of the lockdown and it was cold and yeah, I just didn't. Book 2, it was actually a reread of my favourite book. I think it's my favourite book. It's so hard to decide. But it's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And I didn't just read this time, I also listened to the audiobook. I got through it quite quickly. I think it was a couple of days. And I still love it just as much as I did the first few times I read it. So this one is about 2 magicians who have a competition between each other, but it's done through their students, which they train in magic, and the battleground is a magical circus, and whilst the audience think that it's kind of an illusion, it's actually illusion mixed with real magic. Things I love about this book: Erin Morgenstern's writing is so dreamy and whimsical. I don't know if I'd want a movie of this because I just have it in my head how it would be, and I worry that it wouldn't match up to how my imagination is from reading the book. Celia and Marco have one of my favourite fictional relationships. It's very much fated love kind of relationship, and I like how they're oblivious for most of the book. It's my favourite book, so obviously I'm still gonna rate it 5 stars, and I really enjoyed it. It's the one I always recommend to everyone that loves fantasy. Third book I read was The 10,000 Doors of January, very on trend for the month, by Alix, Harrow, and I haven't been this torn about a book in such a long time. I really liked the idea, the story. It's about a girl who is kind of adopted by a rich man in an architect society who hires her dad, and she finds this book about how you can go through doors to different worlds and magic, and she begins to realise that it might be more real than she thinks. This book starts off so well. I wasn't keen on the kind of academic essay thing that came up, and it's split between her in the present and the book that she's reading, which I felt like I just wanted to read the present story, but the other one was still okay. However, I don't know if anyone else felt really uncomfortable reading this, but I thought at first, oh, it's pretty diverse, the characters and the setting, and then I thought, oh, that's a bit strange, but maybe she's trying to accomplish setting the scene and how the racist attitudes at the time. But then as it went on, it kept being insults about her race and her dad and how they didn't fit in, and then there was this whole scene where she got shoved to the back of the train and she never overcame it. It never really came up, it just was constantly pushing her down, and I didn't know if this was on purpose, but some of the words just seemed, it seemed offensive. So that's why I gave it 3 stars, because I don't know, it's a shame because I really like the story, and I actually cried at the end. I rarely cry at the end of books, but the family theme at the end just tied in really nicely, and it's just some of the things holding it back for me. Book 4 was The Virgin Blue by Tracy Chevalier, who has written The Girl with the Pearl Earring, which I do really want to read. This wasn't the best first impression of her for me. It's about a woman in the 16th century called Isabel, and her life living in France and being a suspected witch and her relationship with the church, and then it springs forward to modern day where this woman has moved to her same town and is looking up her family history and is trying to track down this woman and her family that was related to her. Ella in the modern day has moved to France with her husband and starts to fall for this librarian that's helping her, Paul, with searching for her family, and you can kind of see that the stories do that thing where they're in different points of view and then they slowly merge together at the end. I wouldn't say that it was the best I've seen this done, and although it was a twist, I could kind of see it coming. It was still horrible and it was still a good twist. I just thought it was quite predictable. The main issue that I had with this book was that I didn't like the main character. She was very wishy-washy. She thought everyone hates her. She doesn't have the best morals. She was a bit whiny. I don't know, I just wasn't really rooting for her. I was rooting for Isabel in the past tense, but yeah, I just didn't really care about Ella or what happened to her. So this one got 3 stars. Ruth Rendell, Piranha to Scurfy, and Other Stories. It's an anthology. This was the most surprising read of the month because I don't normally like all the stories in an anthology, and I didn't even know, I just found this on the bookshelf downstairs and thought I'll give it a go. And it's 2 novellas that kind of bookend a load of stories, and I thought it was so good. It's about the everyday kind of chilling, eerie world, but there's a twist in every story, and there was not a story that I didn't enjoy. I enjoyed them all, especially the first one. The first one, Piranha to Scurfy, was like a modern book-themed retelling of The Telltale Heart, and I thought it was so good. The other one, the other longer story at the end, that was good. That was weird but good. I like the one about Butler on the Seaside or something. That was good. Yeah, there were loads of good stories in this. I gave this one 4 stars because there were some stories I liked less, but I still really enjoyed them all. I'm now definitely going to try one of Ruth Rendell's mystery stories, which she's famous for, because if it's a longer version of these, then I'm sure I'll love it. Now no one can tell me that I haven't read this book. This 800-page, massive, beautiful book that I did love. Everyone that told me I'd love it, you were right. I'm sorry. So, Crescent City, The House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. I haven't read any of her books, but she's all over Bookstagram. She's all over BookTok. Everyone loves her. From this alone, I get it. It's about a fae, half human, called Bryce, who witnesses her best friend getting murdered and then is put on the case with a fallen angel to kind of solve it before a big summit, find out who the killer is, find this broken horn, all these kind of mini mysteries in one. I love fantasy. It's my favourite genre, but I don't normally pick up trope-themed books. I just didn't think they were my thing, but oh my god, I loved the relationship in this. It was steamier than I thought it was gonna be, but that was okay. I got through this really fast. It's 800 pages and I read it in 2 days, which is really fast for me. And apparently it's a trilogy, so I can read a couple more of these. The magic system of the drop coming into power, that was interesting. I liked all the different types of characters. There were fae, like shapeshifters that were like different animals, lots of witches, angels. I will say it is a slow start, and more than so, it's confusing, but once I was like 5 chapters in, it was fine, and I loved it. And I've said I don't cry much now, but I've cried at 2 books this month. I did cry for the last 200 pages, just full on sobbing, because I loved it and I didn't want it to end because it was very emotional. I obviously gave this one 5 stars because it was probably my favourite book this month, as well as The Night Circus. Next book I read was The Secret Garden by Frances Hodgson Burnett, and this was a childhood reread because I loved it when I was little and I loved the film and I wanted to see if I still liked it, and I did. I thought it was great. It's not the most complex plot, but it just keeps getting more and more uplifting and optimistic, and I love the characters and they all grow in their own way. And yeah, it's 250 pages, so it wasn't very long, but I enjoyed it over an evening and I gave it 4 stars. So the 8th and last book that I read yesterday, just in one day, which I rarely do, but it was very good, was the first book in the Shadow and Bone trilogy, the Shadow and Bone, because it's coming out as a show on Netflix in April, as this permanent sticker likes to constantly remind me. I want to read the whole trilogy and the Six of Crows duology before then. So this book is about a world where their country has been cut in half by this horrible land with these evil creatures, meaning they can't get to the sea and trade properly. There's a king, and his kind of second-hand man is the Darkling, who commands the army and is in control of Grecias, which all have a kind of power. And Alina Starkov, she discovers that she has one of these special powers, and that she's Grecia, and there's a story of how she comes into her power. I thought this was really good. I originally gave it 5 stars because I just finished it. I was like, oh, that was great. But I did knock it down to 4. Before reading it, I said I wasn't going to fall in love with the Darkling because I knew he'd be a villain because everyone told me, and I didn't want to be that person. But he said a few lines and I was like, okay, I love him too. So although the book does have a villain, I like that the Shadowfold, or the Unsea, I think was the other name. I like that that was kind of evil with the Volcra creatures, like this place that was all desolate. I can't wait to see how that looks in the TV show because I've got an image in my head, but I want to kind of see it how they've seen it. I thought that the side characters were actually done pretty well. Genya, I really liked her. I liked her role. I liked her backstory, and things I wasn't so keen on. There's a thing with the deer, I won't say too much about it, but I thought that was a big part of the plot, but they mentioned it about halfway through and then it came up at the end again and it was like a big thing. But I don't know, it was over very quickly and I thought that was strange. Didn't think we saw much of Mal. I'm hoping he'll have a bigger role in the show, or in the other books that I'm about to read actually. Because I liked his kind of character. He was quite gritty and he kind of came from the orphanage with her, joined the army, but then you don't see him for half the book, so... And then at the end I really liked him, so I kind of wish I'd seen more of him. The last thing was that the system about Grecias, that confused me quite a bit, but it did become clearer when she went to this palace. They explained it a bit more, but I was lost at the beginning. So yeah, I gave this 4 stars. I'm hoping the trilogy I will get better, and I've heard that Six of Crows and Crooked Kingdom is even better than that because her writing kind of has a glow up. So I'm really looking forward to that. Thank you for listening to my endless rambling about my reading this month. I hope you enjoyed it and that you might try some of these books. I have already ordered my to-be-read trolley with the books that I'm going to read this month. So the rest of the Grecia trilogy, Bunny, To Kill a Kingdom, Ready Player One, Crossings, which I might do a video all about that when I read it because it looks so good. Yeah, please let me know in the comments if you had a favourite book that you read this month because I'm always looking for more recommendations. I also have Bookstagram and TikTok, so I'll link them down below if you want to see any more about what I'm reading.